Hey, this is Mark.
This is Christine.
And you're used to hearing something different at this point.
Yeah.
If you've been listening to the podcast for a little while.
Yep. Up until this point, you've been hearing us say this is the Mark and Christine show. And this is the shit we talk about. And today we are still here, Mark and Christine. We are going to be talking about things, but we're getting a lot more.
We're changing the shit that we talk about slightly.
We're getting focused. So up until this point, Mark and I came together and we were just like, hey, we are both coaches. We both have a desire to help people grow. And we have this amazing connection. And we just wanted to start sharing our story, our journey with our people, our followers, our tribe, and also just talk a lot about the relationship pieces. And we were kind of talking about all the things. And leaving it as an open forum.
Well, we started this whole thing, remember, like we came up with the idea when we were in the garden in Colombia, and the idea was, hey, we live 1,000 miles apart and we want to keep this amazing conversation going, so let's just start a podcast.
Yeah, and we're going to keep it going
because that's a normal thing to do when you just want to keep conversation going with someone that you're falling in love with.
Yes.
Like, why not a podcast? I mean, you could just do FaceTime.
Yeah. So this, up until this point, it was a mode of us keeping the communication open and sharing all of the crazy conversations and things that we talked about, and just sort of opening the door and inviting you guys in. So we're going to keep doing that, but we're shifting things.
We're going to shifting gears, shifting directions, a slight 45-degree pivot.
Maybe.
Perhaps. Yeah. It's not a 180.
So what's the shift?
Not at all. The shift is this, you guys. As we've been learning and growing together, and not only doing these episodes, but doing a little bit of coaching and training together and learning more about, like, what is our purpose here? Who do we be when we're allowing the lifestyle and the level of influence that we want to, as a couple, as a team, be able to allow and live in, and things are just shifting. It's more than just a conversation. There are people that we've found want in on this, and like, how did you get that? How do you create that? How do you allow that? And we've noticed, even just like within our own stories, that there's a consistent theme, or a consistent thread, if you will, that kind of weaves them both together. It has a lot to do with the idea that we've been in this personal development game, professional development game, both of us, for a long time, independently, in different ways. Christine in the health and wellness industry, and then getting into coaching, and then I've been in kind of the speaking, training, youth development arena, and then getting into corporate training and coaching and keynote speaking, and now building a coaching company. And so what's interesting is, what's accelerated both of our growths over the last couple of years has been this idea that it's not necessarily about needing more information, or new information, or another book, or another conference, or another seminar, or another tape, or another CD, or whatever you're listening to these days. It's not necessarily about more stuff. It's about shifting the neural pathways that stuff is operating on, the internal operating system of the brain. And so we've noticed it's just time to shift gears a little bit, and we're going to just pivot from the Mark and Christine just randomness, and really start to put some laser focus on really helping people get to feeling better faster.
Yes, because we all like speed, right? Certain times, but seriously, we've all been doing work on ourselves. You probably wouldn't be listening to this if you're not doing some level of work on yourself already. And for many of us, there's always like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing, right? And how do I get there faster? How do I incorporate that? And so we want to take a pause and just help support people in that evolution. And also, the other thing that's shifting is we're going to be recording video as well as audio for our show, our podcast. So you guys can
hang on YouTube.
Hang out on YouTube with us. We're going to be calling it the Unlearning Project with Mark and Christine. So Mark and Christine, we're still going to be here with you guys, but the movement, the theme, everything we're doing is becoming the Unlearning Project. And it's really a movement we're here to start, and we would love to invite you into that if it resonates with you. So you get to now watch us on YouTube, you get to listen, share, iTunes, Spotify, all that jazz, and join the community, which we'll talk about later. But so what's the Unlearning Project even about? I mean, Mark, you already touched on it, but really at the basis, it's really Again, so many of us got through this because we thought we had to become something. We had to become something. We had to learn something. We had to consume something. And a lot of us have been in this like more. I need to become because I'm not good enough. I'm not valuable enough. So if I do this, then I will be. So we've been chasing a lot of things. We've been trying to achieve a lot of things. We've been told that you need to set goals and you need to go after your goals and this is, you need to learn. And we're not suggesting not learning. But what we really want to do is invite people maybe to turn that model upside down and actually think about what did I learn along the way that maybe served me for a while and it helped me for a season of my life maybe to survive, to get by. You talk a lot about surviving, and we do. We need to survive. And a lot of us grew up in situations where we had to survive or get by in a relationship or in homes. But then at some point, that lesson, that blueprint that we have doesn't serve us anymore. It actually starts to harm us. It starts to hold us back. But we keep carrying it throughout life. So what we're suggesting is a totally different way. Instead of learning and becoming something different or trying to search for something outside of us, is to unlearn all of the things, the patterns, the belief systems, the ideas, the behaviors that are no longer serving us so that we can get back to our core. And so it's not about becoming anything. It's about reconnecting with your core, with your source of truth or light or whatever we want to call it, and unlearning so that we can create space to actually create whatever we want. So we're going to share some stories. I think that we need to share some personal stories.
Yeah, absolutely. My experience with unlearning and where I even came up with the idea, the term, the Unlearning Project, for me, it really originated in the garden down in Colombia, where Christine and I really met, and we met a couple.
That's where our eyes were open to each other. We physically met before that, but that's where we manifested each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's how. So just share. This is one possible story. Now, I had been to the garden multiple times before I came there with Christine, but I came in there going through the middle. I was in the middle of a divorce, quite frankly, to be honest with you, and I really was nowhere near a point in my story that I was interested in women. I had very little interest. It was nice to me. I thought it was fun to be, in text message conversation, and that meant something. It was like this maybe is like a dating thing. Like I could try that again. I was nowhere near like the level of like I'm ready to go and get into a relationship full time, right? And what was interesting is while we were doing the work down there, just one thing sort of leads to another in the type of work that we do. And suddenly, like I just questioned, like, well, where does that belief come from, right? The belief or the idea, like you guys know the belief that after you get out of a relationship, you're supposed to wait, what is it, 2 weeks for every year?
1 month.
1 month for every year.
Somebody said that.
Something like that.
They say that. They.
So anytime you're living,
the higher power.
Anytime you're living by a belief or paradigm, a paradigm is just a set of beliefs put together. It's kind of like a thicker cable than just a single belief. Anytime you're operating by a belief or a paradigm that they say you should live by, that's something worth questioning. That's something that potentially is worth unlearning. And what really came from that question was like, well, where did I learn that? And there was certain other things that happened, and I'm skipping a few details. But when I just challenged the idea, interesting. Maybe you could be in an amazing relationship right away. Right, even while you're going through the divorce and coming to the end of it, and wouldn't it be amazing, potentially? And what happened in our relationship was just so much heart healing, and there's so much love and so much like, wow. For me, it was this wow factor of like, wow, this is what a relationship could actually feel like, And so that was one of my stories where I started unlearning, just because I started challenging the thinking and started looking at things a little bit different. It wasn't even necessarily a challenge. It was more of just I'd never really thought about it that way. Because my program that was running in my brain was just so well worn. The neural pathways in my mind were just so deeply connected, and they're so easy to default to that you don't consider that there's any other story available.
Any other way.
No other beliefs.
So up until that point, I know when you and I met, you had been doing, you've been doing speaking and training and stuff like that since your youth, right? And I've been in the personal development world forever as well. So, but I know that you really started to do a deep dive about 5 years before that, right? Like truly to start to work on yourself. So I'm curious what what prompted that, curious just out of what prompted that initial like I have to do something, and then what was your mindset sort of going into that? Like, was it that you had to discover a part of, like, what were you looking for, I guess is my question. So what prompted that, and what were you looking for? I'm making an assumption.
Right. So there's a turning point for me at around 30, 31, where it's like I woke up after that 30th or 31st birthday where it was just like, no more. Like this.
No more what?
Well, it was, I mean, my relationship was hard. Like that was a constant source of like, I had to put on armor to go home. I was afraid to be myself, in the relationship. Like from a career success standpoint, like in my mind, I should have been really successful, making bunches of money, already be a speaker, already have a book, already have all these things. Like that should have been done because of the story that I had told myself from my youth. I had a very successful college career.
Yeah. So
right?
you were feeling.
Yeah. So I was feeling like I was letting others down, or letting society down, or letting myself down. So there was that. I mean, my health was nowhere near where it is now. There's a lot of things that were, just like very subpar. I had sold myself on this story of sacrifice. And it's like, once I got married, once I had kids, you had to sacrifice everything for everybody else. And you put everybody else first.
You hear that a lot though, right?
Yeah.
Like people are always saying like, you have to sacrifice. And I'm just, that in itself is an interesting belief system and how we define sacrifice and our rules around it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I mean, that was really the turning point for me, to answer your question, was right there where I started to say, I gotta do something.
Did you have like a threshold moment? Like when we'll talk about the chemistry of transformation in the future, but one of the key components of that, like one of the key moments to actually have change is you hit a threshold. There's like this moment where you just can't handle it anymore.
Yeah.
Did you have that, or was it more like subtle and it was just like painful,
I think
chronic pain?
There were many different threshold moments. The one specifically, it's like that. I don't know. It's that new decade mile marker from an age standpoint, right? Where you're turning 30, and it's like,
what have I done with my life? I'm
Yeah.
running out of time.
And it was just this moment of utter like disgrace with myself and what I had created. Now there was listening to videos on YouTube and Facebook from a guy named Garrett J. White, who started Wake Up Warrior. And I was just really like, I knew there's no way in the world that I could afford to be a part of that, but I desperately wanted to.
But you didn't have the money.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, but I just remember him wanting, like, what his content really makes you own your situation. Right. And I was just starting to become an entrepreneur at that point, really. I had other businesses my entire life, but I had risked everything, put my family at risk, put myself at risk, my reputation, everything, in order to go and start this business. And it wasn't going great, in the first year. So when I woke up on that first day, having watched some of his videos, I'm like, I gotta shift. Like I have to, I hit that threshold, right? And then I even hit the next step, which is like owning it. Like only I can do something. And the thing that I did differently at that point was I went into a space where I would literally get up at 5:00 in the morning. And my belief at that point, now what had been going on in the relationship until that point, was if a kid got up, I got up.
Yeah.
Right? Especially if it was early in the morning, because I'm an early riser. And I just declared, I let go of the idea like that I had to be the one, and I basically just made a declaration in the relationship. I said from 5 to 6 is now my time. If a kid gets up,
Ooh, you set a boundary. That's new for a lot of people. Setting a boundary.
Yeah.
And making a declaration.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was a piece for me where I declared that, I stepped into that new thing, and I did that every day for a year. Now, obviously that was taking on new content, but also sometimes when you're hearing people talk about different belief systems, obviously it starts to challenge your belief systems, and you start to think about things a little bit differently.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing, which is actually huge, because I know it's one of the first things that I really work with my clients on. It's probably one of the very first things we work on is taking back a piece of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So what you did, like you took back that first hour of the day. It's not just about the first hour. It's like I'm reclaiming something that a piece of myself that, because so many people I hear, and I mean, I can certainly relate to this. Every single person I start working with, without a doubt, says the same thing. Like none of my time is my own. Like I feel very reactive, like a puppet on a string, and everyone else is sort of leading me around. Like nothing is my own. And so one of the very first things we do is like declare, regain a piece of yourself, like get back to yourself through creating space, which is what you did, which was creating the morning.
That was a
morning pocket to get back to yourself. And as you, like, love what you said too, like as you hear, even though you might be absorbing something, I want to like talk about this later, but as it starts to tickle or challenge or, you know, brush against things that are inside of you, and stuff starts to come to the surface, is like, is that still true for me? Does that still apply?
Yeah. Yeah, there was another big moment for me a couple years later. I had made a decision to join this business mastermind, and I was now in coaching. And it was the first time that I had like a real coach. Like I'm paying somebody to be my coach and to help me grow and get better. And I was very much afraid at that point in my life what you would think of me. Right, like what everybody else would think of me. Like I couldn't come on here and like if you're watching this on YouTube, like you see I'm wearing a hat. The hat is old. I've had this hat for like almost as long as this story has been going on, for 6 or 7 years, you know, without a button-down shirt on. Like I couldn't do something like this because I was afraid, like of
You
what
had to put an
everybody else.
image out.
Yeah, and then I wouldn't make certain decisions, or I wouldn't go after certain things because, well, what would they think? What would she think?
What was the old rule?
Well, it was
The
just
old
like you
operating
have to be
system.
accepted and liked in order to belong, right?
And that means you have to look a certain way.
Well, that means you play by everybody else's rules, and like what you think, they think you should be doing. Right. So that was this like when you
Where
say
did you
it that
pick that up?
when you say it that way, doesn't it sound stupid?
Yeah,
Like,
but like so this, but I
this
love what
is
you
what we
said,
do.
like without a button-up shirt or without a whatever, because this is a bullshit rule. This is like a thing we get to
It's a
unlearn
rule.
because and that's kind of my story. But we pick up this thing somewhere along the line. There was some sort of information that got presented to you by someone, and they attached a meaning that said if you don't fit in.
Yeah.
And you don't do these things, then you're going to be ostracized or you're going to be a loser or whatever, right? And then it just becomes like part of your nervous system.
Yeah. I mean, I can literally remember going to my mother's father's funeral, my grandfather's funeral, when I was probably 4, and we had to go get dress clothes.
Yeah, because
right?
if you don't,
to go to a funeral, right?
Yeah.
And that was probably, I mean, that's how far back that goes, and that was passed down from one generation to the next generation, you know, to my generation, and then by the time I was in, you know, my high school years, and I was a big FFA kid back in the day, and you had to have perfect dress, and your tie had to be tied perfectly, and you had to have perfect official dress, otherwise you'd get called out, right? So now I was manifesting
Preppy
scenarios. Boy. Yeah, exactly. And then when I was, you know, early in my career, like you had to wear a suit, you know, in order, you know, a suit and tie, you know, in order to be a speaker.
Yeah,
and,
or else no one would take you seriously. Now it's like people love the person that walks on stage with the flip-flops and the ripped jeans, you know?
You're almost out of place now if you are like a 3-piece suit
funny,
type of speaker.
Right? Yeah. So you hired a coach.
So I hired the coach, and we're in the, thank you, because I would have never come back to that.
Bring him back. So he hires a coach to help him
and we're
learn more stuff.
And I'm giving him all these excuses about why I can't do certain things. And the reason I can't do these certain things is because basically what will they think? And I remember him specifically stopping me and saying, Mark, when are you going to stop giving a fuck what everybody else thinks about you? Right? And that was a huge moment of unlearning for me. Because
massive program was running.
I had never, like, my program was like, you must care what everybody else thinks about you. You're in a business where people have to buy your services, they have to like you, they have to be attracted to you, they have to want to do business with you, and so you have to give them what they want. That was my the paradigm was that. And as soon as he asked me that, it's almost like the neural pathway that had been creating that belief system just like fried. It didn't know what to do. Like it freaking short-circuited.
Yeah.
And then it was like, and for the first time, it was like I took the red pill from the, like in the Matrix, and I could start to see like, oh, I can just say what the fuck I want, how I want to say it, and some people resonate with that, and some people won't. But what's interesting is usually the people that resonate with you the most are happy to pay you for the services, regardless of what you wear, regardless of how you talk, regardless of what, I mean, as long as you bring them value and help them get what they want.
Yeah.
It
So
just
that was like the beginning of
when
that.
are you going to stop caring what the
What
fuck
other
everybody
people
else thinks?
Yeah.
That was like a huge moment of unlearning for me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of the start of your path, and where you really dove into that.
I always tied those two moments very much together because one really led me to the next, and now what's interesting, if we don't have enough time, I think the recorder would run out on this iPhone before we could get all the stories out of all the unlearnings that have happened over the last 5 years since that moment with my coach, but it's increasing in frequency.
So I want to pause because this is important, and a lot of people out there are working with coaches, and we're both coaches, and so when you were doing Unlearning, was it like you were consuming more content from this person, or were you actually like working through the process of release? Like, I'm curious because I know there's a lot of people out there reading books, going to these events, like listening to more stuff, like consuming. Right. And I've worked with coaches who also throw a bunch of information at you, and I'm not suggesting, I know you're a coach, and I don't know what the process was, but whether it's here or like even in I've had a boutique wellness studio for years, and people come in because they're so overwhelmed, like they're so confused because they've heard so much shit, and they're like, I don't even know what to believe anymore, and I can't even make sense of anything because I've been trying to digest so much information. So what was it?
So I've always been a consumer of books. Like, I've read the books and listened to the podcast. I spend tons of time. Even to this day, I still take in content through YouTube. I mean, it's the best, most cost effective because it's free resource of all of it. Podcasts, all the things. I go to conferences to learn specific things. What has changed for me now is that I'm very conscious about what am I putting the new information into. Right? Mm-hmm. So if I think about the brain like an operating system, you hear me talk about that a lot. The brain is literally just, it's software. Like on my phone right now wants me to update to iOS 13.3, right? And our brains have a 1.0, a 1.1, a 1.2, a 2.0, a 2.1. Like, I mean, you have that and you're growing and shifting and changing. The problem is we don't take time to defrag the brain and
clear the clutter,
and clear some of the old operating system, and so now you just get new information on those old neural pathways. And especially when you get tired, I know this for me. Like, when I get tired, those old programs are they still want to come out and run because you spent so much time in the past using those that those literally the physical connections in the brain are so much more well worn that it's easier. It takes less energy for the brain to use those when you're tired.
That's when we become hardwired.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
That's when you hear the term hardwiring. That's what that is.
Yeah.
It's literally like the program has run on autopilot so many times. It's like a track that's so worn in. Like the tread marks are on the track. It's there, and it's and I love what you said. I use the analogy a lot of. I use the analogy of like closets and clothes because it makes sense for people, but I think when people get to the point, and this has again happened for me, I see it a lot in my clients, is that there's nothing wrong with like consuming or reading and listening to podcasts. I mean, we're here doing a YouTube channel and a podcast. The thing is that when we're just trying to eat more, and we're already so stuffed, we can't taste anything anymore. We can't smell anything, we can't taste it, and we certainly can't enjoy it, and we're confused about what we're doing and why we're doing it. And it's just also like the analogy of being overstuffed to the point that we are so disconnected from ourselves. So we can use that in sort of like the physical visualization of gluttony. Like, I can't even sense who I am or what I'm doing or what I'm feeling anymore. And I'm confused about what I need and what I desire because everything's just sort of like cooking inside of me. And we're so disconnected from ourselves. And it's the same thing when we are just consuming information, and it's like, okay, well, this person tells me this and that book, and I'm trying to incorporate it all without taking pause to go back and go, well, what really lands with me? And the thing is, like, if you're overstuffed with crap from the past, if your operating system, your emotions, your brain, your nervous system, like your body is like a huge container, and if it's stuffed with all this stuff, which it is from the past, energy, thoughts, patterns, and you're trying to cram more stuff in, you can't sustain it, and B, you're going to be trying to put stuff in that doesn't serve you.
Think about it this way. It's like, so even if, let's just say we go to the closet. Like if you go to my closet in Omaha, what do you see?
Black shirts.
A lot of fucking
Way
black
too
shirts.
many. I don't even understand. Why are we even buying any new clothes? Like, there's only one thing in there. Black t-shirts. Thrive Today t-shirts. I'm like, and some of them are old and
they've been
discolored.
So let's say we purge the closet, right? Like donate all of it. Get rid of everything, like even like the old stuff that I've been holding on to, some like stuff that has sentimental value, and like purge it. Okay? Now, without an actual paradigm shift and like unlearning,
you'll just go buy more black shirts.
I will.
He tries.
We will.
I had to buy him blue shirts. We're making a shift. Blue shirts.
I bought this shirt, by the way.
I know, but I told you that blue
true.
looks good. I was like, no more black, dude.
Notice
We're
how
upgrading.
She wants to get credit. So what will happen if you don't do the unlearning process? You will just wind up with another closet full of black shirts.
How many black shirts do you own that are all the same?
Whatever. Like all the same stuff. Yeah. It'll be overstuffed and overflowing with all the same stuff that it was 5 years ago, a year ago, whatever. So that's really what the unlearning process about the Great Unlearning Project is. Literally, it's literally helping you consider that there is another color of friggin' t-shirt that you could buy.
Just imagine you could even look good in a multicolored shirt. I mean, how many people are terrified of wearing bright colors?
Yeah.
Because, oh my God, it's too much, or it's too this or too that. And so it's just like, no, I don't do that, right? So what if, like, what else is possible? You know, what if that became the new normal? So, yeah.
So what's your story with unlearning?
So I think, we've talked about this a lot in the past, but I really talk about this all the time, like the traditional model of chasing things, achieving, having to achieve, being a high achiever. I mean, that's what that was how I would have labeled myself. I'm a high performer. And when people ask me, what do I do? I'm like, I'm a soul coach for high performers, because that's who I tend to work with, is people who are getting a lot of shit done, and they're constantly chasing. And yet they're doing, chasing. What's the next thing? Who do I have to become? Like, what's next? I need to get, what do I want? And yet all of this doing and chasing is sort of like, I have a lot of things. I've done a lot of things. I followed this old school model of like hustling. And we were just talking about this actually.
Hustle and
grind, baby. And I talk about it a lot, like second place is first loser. Like, you got to like go after what you want, go hard, make shit happen. And I think like I saw that model externally. It was very much the reality around me. Initially that's what I had to do to survive, right? Like I had to, if it was going to be, it was going to be up to me. So I learned from a very young age that I wanted to make things happen. I was going to be in charge.
So you became a producer.
I was a producer. And I wasn't going to let anyone, anything else get in my way. And I certainly wasn't going to let anybody slow me down. And if I had an idea in my mind, it was like, watch out. It still kind of is like that a little bit, but it's shifting gears. So this became the way I operated in athletics. Like, and I'm not saying don't work for what we want. And I'm not saying let's not put in the time or the energy or the resources, because that's not where I'm at. But I'm suggesting there's a different way. And here's why. Because when I had to work that way in athletics, it was like I had to hustle and bust my ass so much. And like I said, in the beginning, it was very much about surviving, getting by. And the minute we get some evidence to support our behavior, whatever it is, like, again, this is like a 3-year-old starts screaming and the 3-year-old gets hugs and kisses for screaming. Guess what we're training the 3-year-old to do? We scream and kick, because that's how we get love. And so if I get approval, or I become liked, or people want to be around me, or I become the leader because I'm always in this pattern of driving and chasing and goal setting and going, that's where my need for significance is satisfied. That's where my need for connection got satisfied. I was meeting my need for growth. I mean, it's a very addictive place. And a lot of that energy is very much in the energy of adrenaline, and, which adrenaline is exciting, but it's also a lot of stress, cortisol. And so you kind of get addicted to this chemical cocktail, as well as all the feel goods of being liked, being wanted, being, the popular one, or the charismatic one, or the leader. And the problem with that system, that operating system, and all the things that come to it, is that there's a lot of peaks and valleys. There's a lot of high highs and there's a lot of low lows. and there's a lot of extreme bursts of energy and like focus, and there's a lot of crashes, and there's a lot of like feeling great for a second, and there's a lot of feeling shitty for a long time, because you feel like you're not doing enough, you're not good enough, you're not where you want to be yet. And so this, as I was going through athletics, it was always like, who do I want to be? Where do I want to get to? I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. And then it became about work. And then, starting my business 10 years ago, I did so in a really good place, actually. It was, very much, I needed to do it for the kids. I needed to survive because I just gotten out of the divorce. But it blossomed out of a love for fitness and health. But what happened was, even with that, very soon, I got a taste of like success as we would know it, right? Money coming in, clients liking you. And I started at some point chasing that. Like, I always needed to do more. And I remember just going like, man, I can never stop. Like, I can never come up for air. I can never take a breath. And no matter how much money I made in my business, and no matter how many races I won, and no matter how great people would tell me I never felt.
You're never satisfied.
I was never satisfied.
Never
I was literally like this fat person that was kept eating all the time because I was in like insatiated, right? And I needed something outside of me constantly to feed me. And to me, that was because I was constantly being told what I needed to do, what I needed to chase, what would make me, like, here's the next thing we're working on. And I had joined groups. And I'm very thankful for those groups as well, because some of my great friendships have come out of there, and I established some amazing habits. However, I also remember that, like, there was a point where we hear this a lot, like, read a book a week, and I'm not knocking reading because I love reading. But when the habit becomes about, when you're addicted to the habit, not because you're actually learning and growing and it's adding amazing, fulfillment to your life and making you adding more flow and ease and making things grow, but you're doing it because you feel like you have to.
Well, and isn't it true? So let's just say somebody says, I need to be better disciplined, right? Because so and so was successful and they were highly disciplined, right? And they just had the routine and they did the same things every day and they always followed through and they got shit done. So if you're reading a book on that person and how they've got to be disciplined and like their rules for being disciplined,
then all of a sudden you're like, I have to do these things. I have to be this person, right? And you're constantly.
But you're doing it on your operating system, which was never wired to begin with to be disciplined. Otherwise, you fucking would have been.
Yeah. So you constantly feel like you're not good enough, or you're not there yet.
You can't stack up to their standard.
Yeah. So this constant comparing.
Exactly. So
of what you're not doing and stuff like that. So for me, it was like hitting that breaking point.
Okay. I want to unpack your story a little bit, right? So you're at this point where it's like you've gotten to a certain level of success, achieve, now hitting numbers. Now there's just like, there's never enough. You're never satiated. You're never satisfied.
Like, I was happy.
But let's go. Well, and it's not that we weren't happy.
Yeah, like I had a lot of great things, but I was always needing the next thing.
But because of what we know, let's go back into like the hard wiring. So where did that come from? Like, where did that growth, that need for constant growth and never really being able to settle?
Well, I think like I said, for me it was very much a survival based. Why are you laughing?
No,
He's laughing.
I'm thinking about something you did earlier today. So
it's very much a survival based thing, right? Because you guys have heard me talk about this on the show before, but I grew up in a house where, we moved countries like constantly. My dad worked for the government. We were constantly moving, growing. He was an alcoholic. And so there was a lot of volatility in my space. And as I got older, the alcoholism got worse. The home environment became less and less stable. So there was a lot of uncertainty around me. So on one respect, I had to create my own level of control. We become very controlling when we have that, right? It's like, I need to know that I have control of something because so much around me feels uncertain. Like, what can I control? So we become, manipulative or control freaks or whatever, where we need to know, we need to be the ones making the decisions, being in control. And I think people go both ways on this. Some people become totally the opposite. I went fiercely independent. And the other thing is, when we lost everything growing up, like I've shared before, like we lost our primary home, we lost all of our money. I went from having a very, decent external looking world to all of a sudden being like, hi, you're 17 and you get to fully support yourself and figure your own shit out. And it was a very embarrassing what was happening in my life at that time with losing our home, having to move. My dad went to jail and he became homeless for years, and there's just so much shame. And so I really had to go, like, it was like put the pedal way down on the gas and like make sure that shit will never happen to me.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you're just running as far and as fast
I'm
away
running
from
to
that
make
point.
sure that I was like, there is no way in hell that I'm letting that happen to me ever. I will never be that woman that's that dependent on a man that is going to end up getting screwed over. I'm never going to make sure, and so my fuel was very strong to create, to accomplish, to do. I had a lot of good fuel. So it was a bit, it was anger, it was resentment, it was frustration, it was fear, it was all those things. But the fuel was not expansive energy, right? It was a very reactive.
Right.
Yeah.
You're always looking, you had to fill, you always constantly have to fill something. So what's happening here now is like, so when we start running away from something in order to fill a need, in order to feel safe. By the way, there's a thought here that I had. The feminine energy is so strong that in lack of a strong masculine partner, right? And when that doesn't exist in your life, and so your dad literally goes to jail, right? And you have this model, the feminine energy is so powerful that it will do anything it can to create, to be in a space of create. And then what happens from there is, I mean, sometimes it's just like, it's so powerful that you just like, you can't even slow that shit down.
Yeah, but then we're creating in masculine energy, right? So
Exactly.
We're creating from a place of like do, force, like you're gonna make it happen, and that's very much masculine energy, and we've shared about that. So what I found was, it was interesting because my first marriage was a very much an imbalance. Like there wasn't a lot of masculine energy, and probably like I contributed a lot to it too, because I was very much like, this is what we're doing, this is how we're doing it, and if I didn't get my way, I was not a happy camper. And so there was an imbalance there, and then I became a business owner. So now I'm like a mom, single mom of 3 kids, running a business. Of course, I'm gonna have to be the producer. So it just became my MO for my, mode of operating. That was literally, that's where that comes from. That term is like, that is your operating system. That if it's gonna be, it's up to me. And I gotta hustle to make things happen. And I had a lot of rules around that. And so a huge tipping point for me actually was there was a moment in the business where, like I mentioned, I felt like I was like feeling all this pressure, like, oh my God, I'm not reading a book a week, I'm a loser, like there's something wrong with me. Or I'd missed my financial goal by $1,000. Like I remember one month wanting to break 70K in income for the month, and I had this like fixation on like making $70,000 in a month I wanted to break, and it was like 69,500 or something. And I remember I was so mad because I was like, how could I not have sold something for the last $500? And it was about the number. It wasn't even about the whole process and who I was becoming. I wasn't able to celebrate what was actually happening like truly with joy, because I still was like, I somehow am missing the mark. And at the point I picked up a book, which I actually love. So this is, again, books can serve us. It's called The Code of the Extraordinary Mind. And it's Vishen talks about the rules. One of the chapters in there is called the rules. And it was like, he asks, like, what are the bullshit rules that you're still clinging on to that aren't serving you anymore? And this whole idea of like bullshit rules, I was like, I like that. That guy's speaking my language. So I would say that was the start.
That was a turning point.
That was a huge turning point for me to start really looking at, what is all this bullshit that I'm listening to in my brain, that I'm believing, that I'm taking in, like all this pressure I'm putting myself, where is it coming from? And that's when I started to really coach my clients on it.
So what?
That was like the rules. That's where the rules came
that
from.
was like,
that was the birth of the rules.
A mile marker
Yeah.
for you on this pathway to unlearning.
The threshold was, like we talked about, what was the threshold? I think the threshold for me was, because man, this girl got a lot of lasting power, you know. But I think for me the threshold was being a single mom, 3 kids, busting my butt in the business constantly, and I was like, I don't know, like, am I really, like, I just felt like I was hustling all the time and chasing all the time, and I was starting to feel burnt out. And I was like, man, I own a holistic wellness studio. Like, this is not in alignment. And the one benefit of doing the work that I do is I feel very fortunate. I've always loved my work. Yeah. And so I knew very quickly that I was coming out of alignment. And so when I started to feel like I was out of alignment with all the things I was teaching, and I started to feel that, that's when I pushed the pause button and went into high performance coaching.
Yeah. I think it's kind of interesting. I mean, a lot of us are waking up every day and experiencing these same triggers over and over and over. And I'm talking about the typically triggers that we don't like, unhappy ones, things that cause stress, things that increase cortisol levels, things that create anger, fights, resentment, all the things. And a lot of it is just because we haven't taken time to sit back and challenge, like, well, why do I have that rule?
Yeah, and I had not stopped. Like, I was not stopping up until that point. And I would say that that's the first time where I was like, whoa, I'm going to pause and like take inventory. And it started with me going to, I think I started listening to Brendan Bouchard's Charge Life podcast on bronze and stuff. And I started listening to Lewis Howes a bit. And it wasn't listening to be different. It was just sort of like, being curious, which is one of our ways to unlearn, actually, that we talk about. And that was the start of me going, you know what? I think what got me here isn't going to get me what I really desire. And maybe I don't even know what I really desire. So that was about 3.5 years ago when I really hit the pause button to start thinking about creating space to think about what it is I desired. And I knew I needed to get back to some version of my truth, myself, my soul that I had kind of gotten fuzzy about along the way.
Yeah. One of the things that we've uncovered, I think, through this work is, the fact that sometimes what got us to this point got us here for a reason, maybe so that we could just get to a point where we could see, like, oh my gosh, like this is something that just gets to shift. And so it brings us to that point, and it's okay to just honor the person, the persona, the energies that brought us there, but it's also okay to not continue as that person.
And to celebrate. Like, I think so many times we get stuck going like, oh my God, why did I allow this to happen? How could I have done this? And we start lashing ourselves. And all that does is produce more guilt, more shame, more anger, because now we can't forgive ourselves. So the key is really like to stop what we're doing and then like create space, like creating a space to start to think about what is it that I want from this moment on. Like, it doesn't matter what happened in the past, because I was doing the best I had with the information I had, or the information I was attached to, the meaning I was giving to that information. So really, if I'm going back and thinking about what I was doing in the past and how I screwed this up or how I effed that up, all I'm doing is I'm reattaching to that old identity and that old information, and I'm still giving it meaning. So what we're going to do is like stop. And that's really what happened when I drew the line in the sand and I was like, I'm not continuing this way. That's when I decided to pursue high performance coaching and help myself and my clients break free from those old patterns. And that's how we came to be, because, a 1.5 years ago, I also decided, what got me here in relationships, I realized now I was aware of it, because this is the thing. It's like you talk about the red pill or the blue pill. It's like once you've been exposed to the fact that you can actually change, and actually quite rapidly, and you can make a decision, you're like, oh, right, so this no longer serves me either. This relationship, I knew the business strategy, like my way that I was trying to like grow my business and chase success wasn't working for me. The next wake-up call was the way I was running my relationships wasn't working for me. And I knew what got me here in my relationships wasn't going to get me there. And that's when I decided to go to Columbia. So, yeah.
And then there's even more unlearning.
That was a totally mind-blowing experience.
Unlearning on steroids, an upgrading experience.
That was a fast track.
Yes, it is
fast track unlearning.
And it is. You can do a lot of unlearning in an afternoon in Columbia. So, how do we? We're just. I mean, I feel like we're just scratching the surface on this talk around unlearning. just want to come back and reference whether it's the relationship stuff or the business stuff or the way that you're going to work. You know, a lot of people I talk to are just like, you know, I can't even make an hour in my day, in my week, not just my day. I can't even make an hour in my week to stop and do a coaching call.
Yeah,
Right?
that's crazy.
Because the belief is like I need to sacrifice everything else. I need to go all in,
I
put it
don't
all
have
into the
time.
business, and I can't take an hour to sharpen my damn saw.
Yeah.
Right? And so I'm working against time, I'm working against other people's expectations, and etc. And so there's this becomes a belief, and what's needed is a paradigm shift. What we're talking about here in this podcast and this video is literally just scratching the surface of what the Great Unlearning Project is really about, what unlearning really means. And we've given you a couple examples of times when it's just like all of a sudden something challenged you to think just a little bit differently. And I had to unlearn that hustle and grind was the only way to get there. Now there's a time and a place to hustle and go hard. And have you ever stopped to consider that there are other ways of getting there?
Yeah. What other things are possible? And I had
shit.
to unlearn, the same thing, like the old goal setting model and the old achievement model. I always say, like, now I have a whole new paradigm, which is like, oh, that model's actually broken, and there's like a totally different way to create that's way more energizing and way more expansive. And same thing, like, what were my rules and my things about the relationship? I just want to quickly go back to the Columbia thing, because so we talked about like hitting a threshold, like a place where you're like, I can't stand it anymore. The second thing was like, you got coaching. I became a coach. I got coaching as well. I went to events. I started to create space, and you took the morning, I took time. We created space, and then we found a mentor or someone that could help us through the process of like getting back. The third piece that I think is like super critical, and I would say is like the third tipping point for me, that Columbia provided, but you don't have to come with it. Like, you can come with us. We'd love to have you, whether you come to Columbia or you come to our Awakening event, or you find a way to do this on your own, is once we have a taste, it's sort of like if you've never tasted really good food and you've always kind of just had like mediocre food. And then somebody invites you to the most amazing restaurant where the chef has like created the most like delicate, amazing tasting food. And it's like the minute the minute you smell it, you don't even have to like taste it. You walk in and it's like your mouth starts watering, And it's just like your tummy's already like the digestive juices are going. And then you take a bite and you're like, oh my God, this is like the best thing. And oh my God, I can't go back to eating that shit anymore. Right. So the idea here is like the minute we get a taste of what it feels like to reconnect with our heart, the minute we get a taste of what unconditional love feels like, or stillness or peace or joy, like true joy, like the minute our bodies, our souls, like your nervous system gets a taste, and for some people like nature creates that for them, like really to disconnect. But when you get a taste of that, it's like all these doors that were shut like super tight, all of a sudden they start to crack open. And like for a moment you have this huge window that opens up, and then it closes when you go back to real life. But the problem is you've been exposed. You've had a taste. So this is where a lot of people go to events, or they'll go on a retreat, or they'll, do something that makes them feel amazing. And then they're like, how do I keep that going? So Columbia blew all the doors, all the windows open, and I got to literally take a bath in bliss. And it was just such a fast track, because then it became the new normal. It's like, oh, wow, that's possible. I can actually be like that. I can choose to operate that way. And so now the work is just being in it, choosing it, allowing
it to be.
Yeah.
Allowing yourself to be.
Allowing myself to eat the delicious food.
So how do we hang? So we're bringing this thing in for a landing. So how do we continue to learn?
How do we begin to unlearn?
How do we continue? So I'm going to invite you guys over. We have a Facebook group. If you've been a part of the Thrive Together relationship growth community, that's now the Great Unlearning Project community on Facebook. So if you're in there, you have to do nothing. Just come hang out and pay attention. If you haven't yet and you're listening to this for the first time, just head on over to Facebook and search Great Unlearning Project. It should bring you right to the Facebook page. You can ask for admission and we'll make sure you're not a creeper and we'll let you in.
And this is really like a movement, guys. Like, we really want to enlist you. You know, we want your support. If this resonates with you, we don't want any people that are in here that are inauthentic or this. If you're listening to this and you're like, yo, y'all are crazy or whatever, fine. Please don't join. Stay out of the group. Because what we want is people who are like, you know what? I'm raising my hand. I'm sick of the hustle. I know that what got me here isn't working anymore. I know that this stuff gets to shift. And I want to get back to myself. I want to get, this isn't about me not being good enough or not being enough. This group is about really discovering the value you already have, discovering your soul, like your soul's light, your soul's calling. So this is about getting back to you, not becoming anything else.
Absolutely. How else can they come hang?
So the Facebook group, like Mark said, is a great place to just join the community. We're going to be popping in there doing some live trainings, and talking about ways that you can begin the unlearning process. There's some freebies that you can grab in there as well. We also, if you are more of a, like, let me take, the reins into my own hands and like start making some changes now, you can come to one of our live events. We have a couple live events that we run. The first one is The Awakening, and it's coming up in March. So we'll put a link in the show notes so that you guys can learn more about that. But The Awakening is a 2-day event that you can come to, and it's just a wake-up call. It's to take inventory of, where am I today? Am I living the life I desire? If not, what's blocking me? What's been holding me back? What are the things that I get to unlearn? And so we're going to work very closely with people who are at that event, introducing you to some of the modalities that we teach, doing some deep work, hanging out together. It's going to be a beautiful experience and a good appetizer.
Very different than any other live event that you're used to going to. It's not a stand and lecture. It's not parade 16 different speakers and sell you things. That's not what it's about. It's literally about exposing those neural pathways that have been keeping you running the same thing over and over, and start to just give them permission to start to dissolve while new ones get put back in their place. So
because a lot of people don't, like, when I talk, and I know it's certainly true, so many of us are where we are. When I ask you, like, truly what's keeping you stuck, what initially people say is not what the real issue is. So creating a space where you can really discover what are the patterns that are running on autopilot, because they're subconscious. You're like, sometimes you're aware of them, but a lot of these things are there. It's also not just like a yoga retreat. I love yoga, but I want to be clear, like, we are going to be doing breath work and movement and beautiful practices. But this isn't just a feel-good workout event. We're going to be using our bodies to move energy and incorporating those beautiful things. But this is a place to come and start to discover and wake up. The second event we have going on is the Unlearning Project. This is the deep one, guys. This is the big work. So why don't you talk about that for a second?
Absolutely. For a couple years now, I've been bringing people down to the retreat center in Columbia for what has become, this was the inspiration, the nexus. Is that what, like, a beginning? It's the place, the beginning place of the Great Unlearning Project, where it all began, where I got the clarity that the way that we really get to where we want to go is not by taking on more information. It's by unlearning the old beliefs and the bullshit that's keeping us stuck where we are. And so we can only take a few, and that's the logistics of it. The space can only hold 10 or 12 people at a time, and so we can't take everybody. But if this is something that's calling out to you and you're like, I really want to go, I want to get into this, and I want to go really see what's possible for me in this unlearning arena, then this will be the event for you. End of February, end of June, and end of October are the 3 trips that we have planned for 2020. So those are coming. I think we have a few spots still open for February if you're interested, and then we need to start talking about June or October for you at this point. If this is something that's kind of tickling your soul just a little bit, you will not regret that part of the journey. So those are a few ways that you can play.
It is an amazing journey. It is an amazing journey.
There's nothing.
And there's a prep work before and after this event.
It is its own coaching program in its own space.
Yeah, and we do alternative therapies there. We prepare you nutritionally before we go. We spend a week deep diving, doing prep work, and then 6 weeks post event. We stay in a magnificent villa together, beautiful retreat center, working with a shaman. So this is combining beautiful practices. And the last way is to work with us. Hire us to coach you. We can help you break free from the chains literally that are holding you, because that's what it feels like. Sometimes you feel like you're a prisoner in your body. So if you can't make it to a live event, or you're just like, you know what, I want help, I want somebody to work with me one-on-one, we have a program called the Aligned Experience, which combines one-on-one coaching with a tribe that you can join and be part of. So you guys can check out the links for that in the show notes.
Well, there you go. So look for some changes coming through. If you've been hanging out with us for a while, Thrive Together and the Mark and Christine show and all this stuff is getting combined underneath the Great Unlearning Project. You're in it. You're a part of it. If you made it to this part of the show, thank you for sticking with us. As a gift, we'd love you to just get some tips on where to begin with the unlearning experience for yourself. So in the link in the show notes, go down and click on it. There's a link that will take you to the top 10 tips for beginning your unlearning experience. So it's just a simple PDF download, and it'll give you some awareness around the things that we constantly are working on and exposing people to from an unlearning perspective.
So I think in the past we've just kind of like wrapped it up, but I think we should finish it with a question.
Ooh. What kind of question do you have in mind?
I'm totally throwing this like unplanned, unexpected, because that's how we roll.
This was not on the outline that she made us put together.
So I'm going to ask you, what is your number one way to unlearn? Your top way to unlearn day to day. If you see the program running and you're like, man, I need to stop this pattern.
Anytime that I am in a space, now this is literally secondary to the plant medicine that we do in Columbia, because quite frankly, it's in 4 days I can do a lifetime's worth of unlearning.
Yeah.
And so that certainly is number one for me, but I'm just on the day to day, right? And even if you never go with us, the best question that I ask myself, and this is just getting curious, is what we call getting curious with yourself, is what else is possible? What else is possible? So when I start looking like I've got myself backed into a corner, or I've painted myself into a corner again, whether it's something in the business or in a relationship or with an employee or with a client or something like that, and maybe I'm stuck in the sales process, my favorite question is just to stop and kick back for a second and say, well, what else is possible here? And then just see what other answers start popping into my mind that give me an alternative viewpoint or an alternative course of action. What about you?
And giving yourself permission to listen to the answer. What else is possible? And then just shh. And so with that, I'll say my way, which actually goes perfectly with this, just like us. It's so nice. Is just to take a beat, take a pause, and put my hands on my heart, and just breathe and connect with my heart, and just ask myself, like, what is my heart's truth right now? What is my heart speaking? Like, what is my truth around this? And giving myself permission. So to your question of like, what else is possible? I may put my hands on my heart and ask my heart, my soul, to just say, what else is possible? And just trusting the voice that comes from here versus the one that's up here.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
The pathway is through the unlearning, my friends.
Yes.
There you have it.
Till next time, y'all have a great day.
Thank you. Take care. We appreciate you guys listening in.
To have a